Good evening and welcome to the April 21st meeting of the West Sacramento Planning Commission. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Allen, would you please lead us tonight?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's agenda is available on the counter along with white request to speak cards. The request to speak card should be completed and turned in to the clerk on my right prior to completion of any staff presentation. For those speakers who would like to speak on items not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the commission, please write item A on the card. Or if you wish to speak on a specific item of the agenda, please write the agenda item number. We have a few agenda items that we're going to raise today. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes, and on the right is a clock, which will help you keep track of your time. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to feel uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful to all speakers. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised, so all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called on by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Please state your name for the record. Today, we have one item up under the consent agenda, 2 for public hearing, and 1 public workshop. At this time, we will take up presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the commission. And I do not see any before me today, so we will move on to correspondence and staff communications from the Planning Commission Secretary, Mr. Tilley.
Yes, thank you, Chair Guerrero. 2 items to note. Correspondence, your fellow commissioner, Mr. Sternfels, provided the outline for regarding from the recent planning commissioner training. We have a couple extra copies here for any commissioners who were unable to attend that training, but I understand that was very good. And then secondly, regarding last night's city council meeting, they took up second reading on the ordinances 16.3 and 16.4, which are the ones related to the medical cannabis item that we have been at your last couple of meetings. The council did approve those 2 ordinances and did note that the commission's work on those matters, and so those will now go into effect 30 days forward, and so that matter is now concluded. So that concludes staff's communications at this time.
Thank you for those updates. Is there any disclosure of ex parte communications among the commissioners? Okay, seeing none. Oh, yes.
Madam Chair, I visited 2 of the locations, items 3 and 4 on the agenda.
Thank you for that information. Any others? No, okay. Next on our agenda is consideration and approval of the minutes from the April 7th commission meeting.
Just for clarification, sorry, Madam Chair, are we taking numbers 1 and 2 on the consent agenda together, or were you trying to separate those out?
I think we could separate them out for the purpose of establishing a vote at this time. Mr. Tilley, is that?
You could act on the consent calendar, all items at once if you so choose to, or consider them separately.
Okay, if there's a motion to take them both up together, that's fine.
I'll move the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Commissioner Sternfels moved and Commissioner Liebig.
Oh, you know what? I need to abstain on the first one. That's why I was thinking I had to do them separate.
Oh, I see. You'd like to do them separate then? Okay. Then I guess, would you like to withdraw your motion?
I will withdraw my motion and move approval of the minutes, item 1 first.
Okay. Commissioner Sternfels moved and Commissioner
I'll second.
Liebig seconds. All in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions?
I need to abstain from that.
Okay, thank you. And the next item on the consent agenda is the Newport Grove vesting subdivision map number 4748 time extension.
And I will move to approve.
Move to approve. Commissioner Sternfeld?
I'll second.
Commissioner Liebig seconds. All in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay, this item moves unanimously. Next item on our regular agenda, we have a public hearing regarding conditional use permit number P16-0021 for Revision Brewing at 1000 Riverside Parkway, Suite 170/180. Mr. Laffey, will you be doing the presentation?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Revision Brewing is seeking approval of a conditional use permit to operate a 22,000 square foot brewery and accessory tap room at 1000 Riverside Parkway, Suite 170 and 180. That's in the Riverside Center Business and Industrial Park. As you can see on your screen, that's the project site. They are looking to locate in the western portion of the building. The building Revision Brewing is proposing to locate in is zoned business park, and the surrounding buildings are also on business park zoned land. All three of those buildings are currently vacant. Breweries are a conditional use in the business park zone, and they are permitted by right in the industrial zones. So, Katie, you can go to the next slide. So these are some site photos of the building. The top left is the back. The right is the entrance, and that's where the entrance to the tap room would be, and the entrance to the offices would be. And the bottom left is the side of the building. And the next slide. As part of the building, or as part of the business, and as shown on the floor plan on the screen, Revision Brewing is proposing to have an accessory tap room of roughly 3,000 square feet. And this meets the size requirement that tap rooms be 30% or less of the total square footage of a brewery. So prior to applying for the use permit, the project applicant had been working with the city's Economic Development and Housing Department to secure a state community development block grant loan. Unfortunately, a site could not be secured in time for the city to submit a grant application to the state on Revision's behalf. And as such, the applicant is moving forward with this site with private financing. The staff is recommending approval tonight of this item. The applicant is here and also has a short presentation. This concludes staff's presentation.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff at this point? All right, we'll open it up for the public hearing for a presentation by the applicant. The applicant here to do a presentation.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Warren, one of the founders of Revision Brewing Company, CEO and brewmaster. I just wanted to come up and formally introduce myself to you guys and then just kind of give you an overview of what we're wanting to do in the city of West Sacramento. One of the things we did with this Revision Brewing Company is I recruited and selected a team of individuals that have expertise in their related fields. And one of the things is we're not trying to come in here and be a small brewery. We're coming in to build a pretty large facility and to grow within this city as well. One of the things my past is I was the founder and former brewmaster of Knee Deep Brewing Company, which is currently in Auburn, California. I started that 6 years ago out of my garage in Reno, Nevada, and there were some other things that I wanted to do, and it was so I chose to step away and start Revision Brewing Company. So through those years, I've built a pretty good reputation in the brewing community, and have won numerous awards, and we strive on quality and excellence in our product. We're building this facility here to have a maximum output of approximately 24,000 barrels of beer over time, up to 5 years. Since we've made it public information that we were coming to here, we've already signed distribution in over 6 states. So we'll be reaching all the way to North Carolina, Atlanta, all of Nevada, Washington, Hawaii, Oregon, obviously California. So I mean, we're definitely going to be producing a lot of beer just within the first year. We anticipate actually producing about 5,500 barrels of beer just in the first, in 2017, based on the projections that our current distributors are giving us. So we're going to most likely grow more rapid, at a faster rate than we anticipated. But we designed the system to only produce 24,000 barrels of beer. The thing is quality, making sure that we can maintain a great product out there. Obviously, some of the things that locally here, the benefits of the tap room and us being here, can increase some of the tax revenue for the city as well. I do anticipate Revision Brewing being a destination spot when we built Knee Deep in Auburn, we've always told, like, why Auburn? It's so far away, no one's going to come here. It was quite the opposite. People driving all the way from Southern California on the weekends just to fill up their growlers of beer. So it's a pretty big tourist attraction. And obviously, with this type of barrelage, we can expect to be hiring 11-plus employees within the first 6 months, and then reaching up to 25-plus employees over 24 months or more, and keep growing. I'll just hold this up, just kind of, I know it's not really relevant to the planning side, but here's kind of some of our branding that we'll be doing. We'll be in 22-ounce bottles, your kegs, and canning as well. And so we'll be shipping nationally and internationally, so be a really good project. That's pretty much all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And before you leave, I just want to make sure if there are any questions on, from the commissioners. Yes.
Madam Chair, thank you. While you're up there, can you actually, on this diagram, can you describe this a little bit, what we're looking at? I was struggling with one component.
So this diagram was one of our diagrams. So how this works is if you see where it's said tap room, this will be the area in which the consumers will come into to order their beers, either by the glass or fill up their growlers, buy any swag. We do have that stage there, so it's a shipping container. We're going to put that in place. It's not going to be like right away, but we eventually will have that shipping container there, and it'll have a wooden deck that'll be ADA compliant. And this will allow us to have some live entertainment in the evenings or on the weekends. And then if there's no live entertainment, then the stage area will just have some tables on it so people can kind of just relax. What you're looking at with the circles, with the different colors, those are the fermentation. So that's what we call the cellar. So that's where we send all of the wort. Wort is an unfermented beer. So to the left of those circles, you'll see kind of a little rectangle with some circles in it. That's what we call the hot side of brewing. So that's where the kettles are at, the whirlpools. That's where we're boiling all the sugars. We're adding hops. Once it goes into the cellar, that's where we pitch the yeast. And that's where all the magic happens and converts the sugars into ethanol. The cooler area is for the storage of all the finished product. And then you'll see the little circles, a whole bunch of them towards the top left. That area in the beginning will be kind of more just open, but that's where we plan on putting about in the first 12 months, we'll have over 144 bourbon barrels filled with beer. So we'll be really involved into the barrel aging aspect of the industry. Over time, we anticipate growing the 144 bourbon barrels into about 1,000-plus barrels over time. We are been working with Borg's Architectural on kind of making this look a lot better. So to the right-hand side of where it says utility room, we've kind of changed the overall layout in regards to the equipment. So the tap room will actually wrap around the utility room. And what we would like to do is actually use the south end of the building as the entrance for the customers instead of the main doors.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you actually answered my questions. It was
Okay.
the little circles that I was hung up on,
Yeah.
not knowing what those meant.
Any other questions?
This actually is not totally related to the planning commission, but it's just out of personal curiosity. There's the stage, and then there's also a description of some of the proposed entertainment. So where are you on that concept phase? I mean, are you going to be doing programming internally? Are you going to hire somebody, or?
We'll hire somebody for like the entertainment itself. Yeah, local bands. People that confront us, say, hey, we'd like to play here. So if it's a special event like our grand opening party, we'll actually go out and hire a pretty big band for that. So yeah, just local entertainers and people that are passing through.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
I really like this presentation here. Thank you. Okay. I don't have any public comment cards to speak, so at this time, we will close the public hearing and open it up for a discussion with the commissioners and the staff if there are any questions. Yes.
I just have a question that the more I read it, the more I don't understand it. And it's on where it says the recommended action, it's talking about the Class 1 categorical exemption. And then when you flip the page, it's saying that they're not changing anything in the area. How do we determine that?
So Class 1 is for existing facilities, so they're moving into an
So we have a
existing,
building,
existing building, yeah.
okay, but nobody's in the building. And if everything goes right, we should have hundreds of people there every night drinking. So, I mean, how did we say that it's no different than it was? I'm just curious.
Yeah, when we look at these kind of conditions, we really look at if there's any building expansion, the footprint.
Just the building itself.
Yeah, building expansion. This site was previously the site of the automotive training school, which was in all three of those buildings that were in the picture, which was a very busy operation at that particular location, and that has been gone for a little while now, but was well established at one time. So we are supportive of the Class 1 recommendation here.
No, but it's more the building than anything, 'cause it's really not doing anything. So my other two-bit comment for this is that, with the breweries coming to town, if they're going into areas like this, we might want to look something at our matrix one of these days, because just to approve them doesn't seem like the end of the world.
So noted.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't have any questions, I just have a comment, and hopefully I'm speaking from other commissioners, but I just want to thank you very much for choosing, you and your team for choosing West Sacramento. I think, I know that myself and community members are very excited about you coming to town, and I'm happy that you picked us. I'm hoping that it has a lot to do with the intersection of being located near a major kind of, draw for the area in the downtown and central city, as well as being an excellent transportation and distribution center. So thank you for choosing us, and thank you for, taking the time and the investment. I hope that you had a positive experience working with city staff. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to let us or other, elected or appointed officials know, because we want to make sure that you continue to have a really positive experience in our city. So thanks, and thank you very much for, not just the staff here, but the staff, particularly economic development and housing, who've been working with you, because I know that it's been a lot of work.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I think that if we're ready to accept the recommendation at this
Well,
point.
with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve staff recommendation for conditional use permit, the categorical exemption, and the approval of the conditions.
One second.
Okay, Commissioner Austin moves, and Commissioner Kelter seconds. All in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes, any abstentions? Okay, this motion is approved unanimously.
Any interested party may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission in this matter to the City Council by filing a written appeal with the city clerk within 15 days of tonight's action, and that appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
Okay, next item on our agenda is a public hearing regarding Popeye's Chicken conditional use permit at 764 IKEA Court. Ms. Ellen?
Good evening, Chairperson Guerrero and members of the commission. The item before you is a conditional use permit application for the drive-through lane for a Popeye's Chicken restaurant, which is proposed to be located on IKEA Court in River Point Marketplace. The use permit is only for the drive-through, not for the actual restaurant itself. The project is proposed to be located on a .81 acre parcel, which is currently vacant. The parcel is in close proximity to the Firestone Auto Center, Taco Bell, and a small pad building which has the Five Guys, Krispy Kreme, and Sprint locations. The restaurant is proposed to be 2,695 square feet, and the drive-through itself would have a drive-through lane that could accommodate between 6 and 8 vehicles at a time. The proposed restaurant is located in River Point Marketplace, which is located in PD 45. The River Point Marketplace EIR allows for a maximum of 4 drive-through restaurants at that location. Currently, there are 3 in River Point Marketplace: Burger King, Taco Bell, and In-N-Out Burger. The McDonald's, which is located in the same general vicinity, is actually not part of PD 45. It's in PD 23 and was actually existing prior to the conception of River Point Marketplace. And so, although it appears there are 4 restaurants with drive-throughs there, only 3 of them are actually in River Point Marketplace, and it's called out that way in the EIR, which was previously approved. We did have our city traffic division look at the traffic study, which was presented in your staff report. They concur with what the traffic company, excuse me, their assessment of it, that the stacking queue was actually big enough for the proposed restaurant. They went out and surveyed 2 similar Popeyes in the area and found that a queue for 6 to 8 vehicles should be adequate in this location. That concludes my presentation. Other than to note, the project will also have to comply with the River Point Marketplace design guidelines, and we are processing that application concurrently. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. The applicant is in the audience, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff at this time by the commissioners? Yes, go ahead.
Kathy, for clarification, you mentioned that there appears to be adequate stacking outside of the drive aisle. But if I look at it, if you actually have a car stacked up outside of the drive aisle, doesn't it conflict with the existing Taco Bell exit for their driveway aisle?
I'm sorry, were you concerned that the exit to the Taco Bell?
If you're exiting Taco Bell, you could find yourself being blocked by cars stacking outside of the drive-through aisle for the proposed project. And so one of the analyses in the report just puzzled me a little bit.
The Katie Anderson and Associates analysis also had that, that conclusion in the 3rd paragraph of the March 4th letter.
Okay.
And
So they're just saying that it'll work?
no, they're saying that it might interfere with the exit, with those exiting Taco Bell as well.
Okay. So that was my first, just one clarification I was looking for. Is that going to be a problem if they aren't allowed to stack? No, that's not what I meant to say.
I think I have the answer to your question. When our city traffic staff looked at it, they felt that the site itself was big enough that there would not be a conflict between the 2.
It certainly could be possible that if the Popeyes is very busy, much probably in the, at least maybe a dozen cars in the drive-through, they could prevent people exiting Taco Bell from going back out to the intersection. But those folks still would be able to venture further south toward the Firestone and exit that way if they were obstructed coming across the front. But there is additional room for queuing beyond where people would actually receive their food in the Popeyes drive aisle that could be used if they really are you having, 10, 12 cars regularly stacked in the drive aisle. It seems like the conclusions from the analysis that was put in was that the volume in the drive-through at this particular type of establishment is somewhat less than other drive-through restaurants.
Right, I also read that. Based on some studies done in other cities, that the volume is not as high, so they don't anticipate that it would block the Taco Bell.
Again, sorry, for point of clarification, we're approving the conditional use permit. It would go for any restaurant, regardless if it's Popeyes or a different one, correct?
The conditional use permit is for the drive-through, not for the restaurant. And so any restaurant with a drive-through component would be coming to you because of the drive-through.
Yeah, but our analysis on this drive-through is predicated on the characteristics of this particular type of user. And so a different type of user in here that has a much higher volume, drive-through lane volume, we might look at that differently here. There is not a lot of room here, but this seems to be one that if it doesn't have the drive-through volume that you might think and see at some other drive-through establishments, then it seems to be able to work.
So to clarify what you might be asking, hopefully this is helpful, I think the question is, does this CUP go with the applicant or with the property? Is that sort of what you're saying?
That was my question, and if I understand you, it goes with the applicant.
The use permits would tend to run with the land.
Right, and that's a
in
point that he's
typical
trying to get to,
scenario.
is, let's just say, theoretically, if Popeyes pulled out and In-N-Out, I know In-N-Out wouldn't go right next to it, but an In-N-Out which has a lot of stacking, a significantly larger amount of stacking, or a McDonald's or something that, probably has a higher volume than Popeyes. I think that's the commissioner's concern, is that he may not have concerns about this particular applicant, but he may have concerns about approving a CUP for this property if it were a different end user.
Yeah, and I think in the way Condition 1 is structured is that it does tie in the applicant's particular project description here. So yes, we're doing a drive-through, and it's not for the brand Popeyes per se, but it is for a user of a building of this size and with these characteristics. And so should another one, should Popeyes go away and another drive-through user come here, we would have to see if that was of similar characteristics to what this one is being proposed and what our analysis is based on. Or we may need to come back.
But at that point, the structure would be built.
Well, it is probably not, it's probably not likely to switch after if something were ever built. But this use permit is based on the description of this type of restaurant.
I don't know if I would change the actual structure, but maybe condition queuing management such that not to highlight In-N-Out, but they'll actually send somebody out with a little mini computer to either guide the queue or get it moving. And
I have observed In-N-Out doing that at times when their queue is many cars.
So if the intensity were to increase, I would probably recommend something like that. But if you think this description is adequate for the property, I'll go with staff's opinion on that. So, sorry, I know we haven't even gotten to the hearing yet.
That's okay, any other questions?
I had a question, maybe the clarification. In the description of proposed use, it says the property is 2695 square feet, and in the map, it says 3,149. So I'm not sure which is accurate.
Where are you seeing the
There's-
3,000? Because on,
On the
plans.
on the map.
well, it says 2690.
I'm looking at it here. This is the-
Look at that attachment 2. It's written right under the
that's
restaurant name.
Yeah, there does seem to be a discrepancy between the exhibits. Attachment 2, there is a reference to 3149 square feet. I know a lot of these are a prototype, type building. We may need to ask the applicant to clarify the size of their proposed building.
All right, we're good. We'll ask the applicant to give us clarification. And any other questions?
Do you need to open the hearing?
I can open up the hearing if you're all ready to move on with the public hearing. All right, we'll open up the public hearing at this time, and if the applicant come up and provide your presentation and also be prepared to answer questions.
Good evening. My name is Julio Tinajero. I'm Milestone Associates, Yuba City, California. And we're the design team, our firm for the project. To answer your question, originally we did go in with a smaller prototype, which is the 2695 that you have on one of the exhibits, but we actually changed it to a larger prototype, which is the 3149 square feet. And the reason we did that is it's a larger kitchen. So it's actually called the HP, the high production, which means it's a faster turnaround time. So we saw the restaurant, just so for information, our standard Popeyes are less than 180 seconds, turnaround time from the time the order to pickup. As you know, the chicken's already cooked and ready to go, so they're just thrown in the boxes. So it's fast. But in this case, we went ahead and used the bigger building, which has basically a larger production, which makes it even faster. I think they reduced it down to just over 2 minutes or something from the time the order to pick up. So the question about the queue, the franchisee that is building this has numerous stores. It's one of I think the largest franchisees, so we're really familiar with the production and feel very confident that we were not going to have a problem. Obviously, when we design these projects, we're looking for customer satisfaction. We want repeat customers. We want to make it pleasant, for the customer. So we don't see a problem with that, and we know based on our actual numbers, the turnaround time from order to pickup would be a lot faster. So just again to clarify, we are going with the 3149. The exhibits that are shown, I'm looking at all of them, I believe they're all referencing that, so I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, clearly the staff report includes the original square footage, but the exhibits clearly do state that, as he stated, the 3149. And so that is what we would expect this one to be.
Okay.
And
So
that's
it'll be
what's shown,
amended.
that's what's shown on the plot plan, is the 3149 footprint. So, any other questions? I can open.
I have a question, but I'm just going to check with the commissioners to see if there are any questions first. No? You mentioned you're going to have a bigger kitchen. Are you expecting just a higher production? Because the estimates of the number of cars were based on other
No,
Popeyes.
it's not so much. Popeyes did a national, as you know, it's a national chain. They just did their own internal studies and figured out what would be a faster way to get the product out. And they actually came up with this new prototype, and the idea was to enlarge the kitchen, not necessarily the dining room. The dining room's the same, so the kitchen is just for faster production, so that the customer would be getting their chicken a lot faster than our previous prototype. So it's not necessarily for this specific location
Okay.
that we're estimating a lot of numbers. It's just a national approach that the company wants to just produce faster turnaround time from the time you order, from the time you get your food. That's the reasoning.
Okay, that's good to know. And as you see on the map there, that you do butt against the exit from Taco Bell, and if you have like peak times, would you be interested in doing something
Yes.
like what In-N-Out does to get people moving along faster?
Yeah, they,
Or maybe kind of helping to manage the traffic out there a little bit? I don't know, safety reasons, I don't want you to go out there and do that, but trying to figure that out, so,
again, as you mentioned, or one of the commissioners mentioned, like In-N-Out does it, they have somebody out there kind of like directing. Our management team as well has been trained to, if we do have peak hours where we do have that, we can definitely provide something like that. But again, with the high production kitchen, our pickup time is going to go so quick that even in peak hours, our stacking is not going to be that far back. If it did, we do have, again, it was mentioned, we can actually, you see not also, if you have a big order, you just have the customer wait in the waiting line, and then they bring it out to them, but they don't hold up the stack.
Yeah.
So we designed it so that if they do have to move out to one of the stalls there or move around the drive aisle, we have that ability to have them wait and not,
Wait, instead of like.
instead of
having it
waiting,
backed up,
keeping the
yeah.
whole line stacked up.
Okay, good. Any questions at this time? All right, thank you very much for, participating here in West Sacramento.
Okay, thank you.
This time, I don't have any comments to speak by the public, so I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners for discussion.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
So under the conditions of approval, it requires design review administrator review. So it's just some comments for the design review administrator to take into account when they're reviewing the application. It seems that there's a lot of unprogrammed space that accompanies this new design, particularly the ones that front the main drive aisles, right? IKEA Court and then whatever that road is that basically you would drive into towards the Taco Bell and In-N-Out. I would just like that to not be a concrete jungle. I don't have any specific direction, but drought-tolerant landscaping might be acceptable, some sort of, public art or creative, something. I don't want it to be just pavement. So that is my comment for design review administrator.
Go ahead, Commissioner Liebig.
Oh, sure. Thank you for the presentation, Kathy, and for the applicant for coming. This isn't my favorite type of design. I think my favorite type of design in that area would flow with, say, the Burger King design, which fits into, say, almost looks like more of an existing structure. This is a standalone restaurant, and I mean, it's similar to what we have out there, which is Taco Bell and In-N-Out. Do we have any non-restaurant drive-throughs out there? I'm sorry, I should.
Starbucks?
Is there a Starbucks in that?
On the other
No.
side. On the other
That's
side.
not in this development, and within this, because this development is limited to 4.
Yeah, the,
Drive-thrus.
The golden one.
well, there's the other hamburger place over there, Five Guys.
It's not drive-through.
Yeah, it's not a drive-through.
You got
I thought,
that big
Russ,
list.
were you asking about?
No, the question is strictly pertaining to
And there's a
drive-throughs.
car wash, and the gas station.
Technically, I think you have to drive through the car wash.
I know, no, I'm just talking about, if your question is about stacking.
No.
There's cars
the
stacking,
the-
waiting to get washed.
In the EIR, the site is actually limited to 4 drive-throughs, and the staff report says restaurant drive-throughs. And I just wanted clarification. Is it truly restaurant drive-throughs that we limited to 4, or drive-throughs?
Like pharmacy drive-through or
Exactly.
dry cleaning drive-through?
Exactly.
It
Or
looked
bank.
at restaurants, because that is a unique characteristic, much more so than like the drive-through where the Golden One is out there in terms of the volume, going through there is, and we also don't require use permits for the ones that are associated with the pharmacies and banks. It's only restaurants. And so the EIR assumed that 4 would be out there. It's not necessarily a limit on the total that could be there. It's just what the EIR studied. Somebody could come for another one out there, for example, but they would be beyond the bounds of what was in that EIR.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay. That's good to know.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm going to make this comment because to be very honest with you, when the original planning commission heard all these projects out there, we tried to limit the number of drive-throughs. And I think most of the commissioners were surprised that the McDonald's wasn't part of the 4. Because the ultimate goal out there was to get a nice restaurant that we could go into and sit down. And, I think this is just something that got past many of us at the old commission level. And it's okay, because that's what we did. But I think that fortunately, this is the last drive-through that can be out in that area, and we finally got a limit to it. And that's the good news. My question is, and I should have asked it when the applicant was up here, because as I look at the design, this isn't really structured for anybody to go inside and eat, as best I can tell. And Martha, I hate to ask you, but I mean, maybe we could ask him, I mean, do people eat inside this at all? Because all the way around the restaurant's a drive-through, so I mean,
Right.
there's nowhere to park.
Limited parking.
And I didn't understand
see.
how all that worked, or why
2, 3,
we
4,
didn't have an area if, maybe you
5,
don't eat inside of Popeyes.
6,
I haven't gone
7
there, so I
parking
don't know.
spots? Well, 7 parking spots, and they can walk, there's parking on the other side.
But
Well,
if you-
there is parking
But you
on
would
the
be
other
walking
side.
through the drive-through.
You know,
For most
unless
of them.
you're a handicapped person and you have trouble walking, which I can attest to a little bit from my personal
Right.
experience, but there's nothing available for anybody there. And I was just wondering why we skipped that part, why we surrounded it with a drive-through. And I don't know if that's a staff question or an applicant question.
Well, I think we could open the public hearing and ask the applicant what their thoughts are. Would you like to answer the question?
Sure.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll open up the public hearing for the applicant to answer the question.
Okay, so I'm sorry, the question was, why did we,
Well, I would just tell you that my wife is handicapped.
Okay.
She has to be in something to get her around easily. And I noticed that the drive-through totally surrounds the building, so there's no spot for a handicapped person to park close. There's no, do you not eat inside of Popeyes? Is that it?
as you know, well, you
No,
may
I
not-
don't know,
you-
'cause
you
I
may not know,
never
yeah,
been
exactly,
there, so I
sorry.
don't know.
The restaurant, the Popeyes restaurants are, usually it's like a 65, 35 break during different times of the day. So in other words, we have a lot of drive-through restaurant, a lot of people order and take home. It's mostly, take-home kind of deal. Or during the lunch hour, you might have a lunch crowd that dines in. But the majority of the business is, it kind of leans towards a drive-through, kind of like a take-home kind of deal. So
Okay.
we did provide, what happened with this design is that we wanted to really welcome the customers, since they're coming in from IKEA Court. We wanted them to see the front of the building, which is, articulated to, be welcoming, and they'd see it, wow, there's Popeyes. And they can pull in, and the parking, even if you look at the other buildings, the parking is not as close as you probably would want it, but so we keep that in mind, obviously, to try to keep it as close as possible. And per code, we're required to provide accessibility as close as possible to the front door.
So where does a handicapped person park, and how far do they have to
Do you
try
see,
to walk?
we have them labeled there, right at the, those first stalls along the,
It's basically like the north.
I'm
It has
trying to
to-
look at this one.
You might want to open the big one. but
it's kind of hard to see, but we do have them labeled.
See?
It'd be the
Okay.
first stalls
It's
that
next to the
somebody,
hatch mark. It's hard to
come-
see.
somebody come to this location, those would be the first stalls you would see.
I mean, it just seems like I'm not even sure how you can pass the handicap section with all your parking at the other end of the parking lot. I always thought it had to have something relatively close. And
It's,
as I look
There
over
is-
David
There
going,
is a path of travel. That's, I
Well,
think
there
what you're
is a
saying is
path
there
of
needs to be a
travel.
path of travel.
There- Commissioner Moore, I was a little confused on that too, with looking at the, the black and white version. If Katie, is the document camera, the eye in the sky, does that work? Because we can put the color version up, and you will be able to see that there are spaces immediately at the front of the building, including a disabled,
Okay.
space.
and David, I
Yeah.
couldn't see it, so
Yeah,
I was
I
trying
honestly, I
to
couldn't see it either
make
until I looked
sure
at the
that
color
we
version.
had something for them.
yeah.
Okay.
He's like, he's coming to. This- Yeah, he's gonna
Oh, I
show
see.
me what I've done.
Oh, wow.
But is it?
Do you need my map, Dave? You need this map instead?
Trust me, where my finger is, there's about 5 spaces right immediately adjacent to the building, including the van accessible.
Oh, I see
space
what you're
right in
talking
front of
about, yeah.
it. It's a little harder to see on the gray black and white.
No, I see it on the big map here.
That's what we're, so we're saying the first stalls you'll see are the accessible stalls if you're coming to the restaurant. So if you're pulling into that driveway, those are the
No, I
first.
understand now, I just wanted to make sure we had it, I couldn't see it.
These are the spaces he's talking about. And then this is.
I'm too old to see these little tiny things.
Oh, we do, I definitely understand we have to be
And
ADA,
I didn't open this one to see it, so.
ADA compliant, and we are definitely, again, want to welcome all our clients, and our customers, so.
Okay.
Any other
good.
questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for providing the clarification.
Can I make another comment?
Did you want to ask, should I close the public hearing at this point, or are we still asking the applicant questions?
Let's not close the public hearing. It's a comment, but it may warrant a response.
Okay.
So I think one thing that is, I imagine, underlying some of our questions is that this particular location, it's not your traditional kind of lunch, dinner, eatery. Given its location, as you well know, the intersection of the Capital City Freeway and the Highway 80 bypass, we get a very significant amount of volume of people commuting to the Sierras and the Bay Area. So we have just thousands of people commuting through. It's not just serving people, the 50,000 people who live in West Sacramento. So one of the things that we're referring to is when people are stopping at this vicinity, very often you see very high volumes of people stopping for a rest stop. So you will see long stacking, and there are people who are going to want to go in and sit down and have a meal, which I think is a little more atypical from what you typically see of, you know, a neighborhood serving restaurant area, which is why I think we do have questions about these people who are coming, you know, they've been driving for an hour or 2 hours, they want to take a break before they spend another 2 hours on the road. Where are they going to park, and is there a safe path of travel for multiple people, even if that's not Popeye's typical market model? And then in regards to the stacking, under normal circumstances, I am comfortable with the city and the consultants' traffic studies. I will say, though, that it does happen where you have a large volume of people stopping at dinner time when they're coming back on a Sunday afternoon from, you know, going skiing or camping or whatever. So I think that's just something to bear in mind. And what I was mentioning to staff for your benefit in kind of more layman's terms, you know, as you well know, that's the frontage, that IKEA court and that intersection basically to the right of the map. I just want to make sure that it's a beautiful intersection. What's right there on the corner is an existing public art piece, and I don't want that public art piece to be minimized by just having a sea of concrete around it. Seating, covered seating, landscaping, particularly drought-tolerant landscaping, are the kinds of things I would like to see there. So those are my comments, and applicants are nodding their heads, acknowledging, so I don't think we need to have them come up or say anything. I'm comfortable with that.
Oh, very good. Commissioner Lee, do you have any questions by any chance?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay. All right, we'll close the public hearing and see where we're at on next steps here on taking action, if we're ready to take action.
Well, since we didn't get to drink beer to make sure the beer price was okay.
Where's our
And we
chicken?
haven't tried Popeyes to make sure the chicken's okay, I would make a recommendation that we approve the recommended action.
All right, Commissioner Moore moves. And Commissioner Kelter seconds. All in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay, this motion is approved unanimously.
Right. Any interested
Thank you.
party may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission in this matter to the City Council by filing a written appeal with the city clerk within 15 days of tonight's action, and the appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
Oops. Okay, we will now move to the public workshop on proposed amendments to the wireless telecommunications facilities policy. Mr. Laffey.
The purpose of this workshop tonight is to discuss possible amendments to the wireless policy, which are proposed primarily in response to recent state legislation that has gone into effect since the city's wireless policy was last updated in 2014. The two notable laws that have gone into effect since 2014 are AB 52 and AB 57, which taken together create enormous time constraints challenges for wireless projects not eligible for a CEQA exemption. The overall goal with these proposed amendments is to buy staff and the commission more review time in order to prevent the need to request a tolling agreement from the applicant with an impending shock lock. So I'll begin by first briefly going over the two laws, and then I'll go over the proposed amendments to the policy. All right, so AB 52 adds a new resource section to CEQA for tribal cultural resources. AB 52 requires lead agencies to formally consult with NAHC-listed California Native American tribes that have requested consultation prior to and during the CEQA process to determine if a proposed project will have a significant effect on a tribal cultural resource. The addition of this new CEQA resource section will lengthen the time it takes to produce an environmental document, as the consultation process or time between the Native American tribes and the city can be quite lengthy. And our experience so far with current projects is that the consultation time process takes upwards of 2 months from when the consultation begins. So then the next one is AB 57, which deems approved any application for a wireless facility if a local agency fails to make an action to disapprove the application within the reasonable time periods specified by the FCC's 2009 shot clock order, which is 150 days for a new site build and 90 days for a co-location. And the shot clock is from when the application is when they first submit, and it only pauses when it's deemed incomplete. So these are the 5 proposed additions to the minimum application requirements. The first 3 are directly related to AB 52 and AB 57, and they are meant to have more for the applicant to provide, so that if when an application is incomplete, that's when the shot clock would be paused, giving us more review time.
I'm sorry, let me just interject. So this is just a proposal for wireless only, no other applicants?
Yeah, right, wireless projects only, yeah. So 1 and 2 are both for AB 52. The ground disturbance, a discussion of ground disturbance, and then also cultural resource report. And this would help, not necessarily would be needed, but we do want to have it as a application requirement, and it can, at the time that it comes in, we could judge whether or not it's actually needed. And that helps to expedite the process for tribal consultation. The third one is a public workshop before Planning Commission to receive preliminary design feedback. The workshop may take place either before or after an application submittal, but must have commenced for an application to be deemed complete. So this is definitely a little bit different than the normal process. Adding this requirement that a project go to Planning Commission for preliminary feedback before being deemed complete would allow for more review time of an application and would give the Planning Commission an opportunity to weigh in on the potential design of the tower in the beginning of the process rather than the end of the process, when the shot clock is coming, the immediate horizon of the shot clock is coming to an end. So the fourth one is photo simulations of 2 angles of each proposed design. This is already commonly requested for applications that are going to Planning Commission. This would codify that. And the fifth one is multiple design options. This would expand on the existing requirement that alternative design options be considered and rejected. It would require the applicant to provide a number of design options. We could have maybe only one of which could be a monopine or a monopole, and this would require the applicant to maybe provide something separate besides just the typical monopine, monopole. It could be, we could have 2 design options, 3 design options, however many the commission would like. Next slide, Katie. So these are proposed additions to structural design and environmental standards. It was mentioned during the Stone Boulevard wireless project a few months back that the commission didn't like the barbed wire or the chain link fence. So some possible additions to this section would be that a CMU wall may be required, or other similar type of screening, and also prohibit barbed wire. Barbed wire is currently allowed in the agricultural and the rural zones, as well as the industrial zones. But with this, maybe it could be no barbed wire at all for wireless facilities throughout the city. So these are the proposed amendments to the wireless facility. I'm hoping to get as much feedback as possible.
Yeah, I'd just like to build on what Seamus has done good work on this. Many of these things sort of are reflective of sort of what the practice has been as we've looked at various wireless facilities over the years. But going through the project on the Stone Boulevard one that has been before your commission a couple of times over the last few months, as Seamus mentioned, it's certainly become clear to us that these two laws that have been passed, albeit well-intentioned, seem to be going a bit at cross purposes. You know, the first one is making things take longer, and then the second one is forcing them to take less time. And we don't want any projects taking any longer than they have to. But, you know, we sort of realized on that one that, you know, we were fortunate to have received the tolling agreement that we had requested, you know, from them at the time, but that was an ask. We, you know, we didn't have to get that, and we were very fearful that the Planning Commission was sort of going to be forced to act on that one based on the shot clock time. So our goal here is to build in some of the things that we generally have experienced in other projects and what we think the commission largely has expected on other projects. But the reality of it is that it may be very difficult for us to comply with both laws simultaneously and to give the commission and the public adequate time to review these projects, which are often some level of controversy, especially as they're, you know, closer to residential neighborhoods. So our goal tonight is to get some feedback on these concepts. We are trying to keep these amendments somewhat limited at this time. We may look to do a more significant look at this in the near future, but for now, these are the items that we've put together, and we'd definitely like to hear what you have to think about these.
Are you done with your presentation? Okay, great. All right, I'll start to my left. Were any questions or comments, feedback? No? All right.
No, I do appreciate, though, the interest in not delaying projects. Good idea.
On a personal note.
Yes. Great idea.
Okay, Commissioner Kelter, do you have any questions or feedback? Commissioner Liebig?
I do. Thank you, Seamus. And I have several comments, and so I'm just going to plow right through them. So if anybody has anything that you'd like to throw in there as I'm going through, just feel free to go for it. I definitely like the idea of incorporating things that you need into the actual application process before making it complete. That was very smart. And puts the burden on them. If there are other things that you can do, great. Also, having us do a workshop as part of the application, again, that
Yeah, that's a great idea.
really speeds up the process. So I think that was,
We usually do workshop these, you know, anyway, especially when they're close to residential. So, you know, we figure we can have that in there. We can always decide not to do it, you know, later, but having it in there up front, I think will help us, because most of the ones we do see are going in closer and closer to residential areas as they try to fill, because those are frankly the people they're trying to cover, it seems like, the most.
is it possible to impose response deadline for the tribal consultation?
No.
Okay.
The only two deadlines in there is, we have a certain time frame by which we have to offer to consult, and then they have 30 days to respond to say, yes, we would like to consult, or no, we don't. And then after that, there is no formal time frame established in the law.
And this is for any CEQA? For example, if you're going to co-locate onto a building, and it's typically a zoning administrator action for us.
Well, we should clarify, we are talking about projects that will require a negative declaration or higher. And, you know, we started talking about this because we were working on a cell tower project down in the rural area off of Seymour. That project was ultimately withdrawn. But it was very clear to us when we were working on the Stone Boulevard one at the same time that if we had to do, because that Seymour one, we definitely would have had to do a neg deck on it, and thus we would have to do AB 52 on it. And it seemed clear to us that there was no way we would be able to get back, complete the AB 52 and get back up here within the 150-day shot clock period, especially as the holidays approached and whatnot. So that was sort of the genesis of this idea that we're bringing to you tonight.
specific comments on, and now I'm going to try and stick with the letter numbering. I'm under H, number 5, for multiple design options. This is going to be the requirement to provide multiple design options. I would encourage just maybe a little guidance on this, with a goal to blend into the surrounding area. It's not that we're just looking for multiple design options, we're looking for designs that best match the character of the area.
The term that I wrote down was contextual.
Contextual.
You know, so, I mean, yeah, it has to fit, like whether it's industrial or, you know, a tree or whatever.
Contextual, I like that word.
Yeah, that lady at the end could probably throw out some fancy words too.
Okay, under J, J1, this is regarding the wall. They're actually coming along with more advancements in these, and there's now undergrounding. I understand that undergrounding is expensive, but I would like to allow it, and I don't want to necessarily prohibit it by saying everything must have a wall. So if we can make sure that we include undergrounding of the equipment, or they could go into an existing building for that matter. I want to make sure that we are not prohibiting that and,
Or turn them into public art.
or turn them into,
I mean, we do that with the water towers.
true. True. Barbed and razor wire, I'm assuming that also means chain link, but do we need to specify?
What's that?
I was saying that it is different than chain link, so if you want to include
So-
that, I would include
Say that.
I
chain
would
link,
like,
barbed and
let's
razor wire.
include chain link.
I think we want to say that your equipment, no chain link for the enclosure.
Is my
Yeah.
primary goal, well, not primary goal of joining the commission, but one of them was to eliminate chain link from anywhere. So,
He's really noble.
so, okay, on the actual policy, attachment 1, the section that I really like is section I. This is the section I often reference when these come up, and it's the order of preference of facility types. And this was specifically included to provide guidance for us. And I don't, want to wordsmith our policy, because we put a lot of effort into it. If there's a way to emphasize this section, I would like to see this emphasized, either make it a standalone paragraph or move section I up in front of approval process, but make sure that they understand our guidance and the preference.
I agree.
Oops, I skipped one. Under H1, lowercase g, this is just a minor edit. Alternative facility design options considered and rejected. There's an IE there. I think it should be an EG. For example, it is, for example, not in other words. So, okay, moving along. Under J, which is structural design and environmental standards, 1. This says that any advertising of any kind is prohibited on a wireless facility, including logos or other identifying features that represent the carrier being serviced, as well as advertising for activities unrelated to the primary use. I have kind of a question on this one, and I'll point to the IKEA sign as an example. The IKEA sign is a cell phone tower. It's a brilliant one, but it is a cell phone tower. So under our policy, that's actually not allowed. So how do we,
Why would that not be a?
because our IKEA sign is advertising.
It represents the
and-
Well, that is a sign with a cell tower in it, I think not the other way around.
Semantics. Now you're thinking like
That's
developer.
How is that different?
That is a legitimate distinction. The sign existed before the tower was added to it.
Yeah, there are antennas on it essentially that are concealed within it, but that certainly was erected to be for IKEA primarily, and then they found a way to put antennas on that sign.
Okay. So it's a chicken and egg thing.
Yeah, I mean, that was a sign, the PD was amended specifically to allow a sign of that height in that particular plan development. And fortunately, they found a way to put the antennas on it some years later.
I understand what you're saying, that does seem a little chicken and egg, but there is a difference. The difference is that approval of that sign was part of the discussion and part of the approval process. So that sign was an approved sign. What we're trying to address here is sort of stealth signs, a sign that ends up getting put up ostensibly because there's a cell tower, and then it just so happens there's also a sign on it.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So, 2 down from that, number 3. Unless otherwise required by FAA regulations, I think we might want to add or part of stealth design, where it says all equipment, antennas, poles, or towers shall be either constructed or treated with non-reflective finish to minimize visual impacts. Is there, the thing that I think we're having conflict here is we've come a long way with stealth designs, and what keeps coming up in this policy is just a monopole. So that's just one recommended edit. Similar on number 6 in that same. Number 6 is really talking just about non-stealth towers.
Would you like to consider an amendment to number 6?
I would just recommend staff possibly look at it and.
We'll work on that section a little
Okay.
bit.
I don't need to wordsmith here. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you. I believe that's it, yes.
We can always come back to you if you have any questions. Commissioner Moore?
No, he's pretty much touched everything there is. I guess, I noticed that the cell towers we're seeing today have different things other than barbed wire and stuff around them. And, we talked about everything. He talked about undergrounding. Andrew's sitting here, he's got the book that shows undergrounding. He was gonna talk about it. I mean, what a great thing. But we're dealing with, something out in the outskirts of the town that maybe doesn't get a lot of looks. You still gotta protect it so nobody gets in it. And I just wanna make sure that we, you say don't put up barbed wire or anything, but we gotta figure out what's a better alternative for that.
Yeah, there certainly are other fencing concepts out there that provide the security. I think the best example is the fencing that's around the water tank in the Bridge District, where it's a very secure yet hopefully relatively attractive fence around that facility. But the undergrounding, this is, for the ground equipment. I mean, the tower itself is still going to be, 80, 90 feet in the air in most cases.
And not to let you know that Mr. Levick he's actually, when he's talking about these signs and we put cell towers in them, I just think putting something in the ordinance saying it's okay to do that is something that we should include, because we talked about one location, but there's many locations. I think there's the River Cats on the scoreboard.
There is.
And I'd hate to have Mr. Mitchell go tell them to tear the scoreboard down because it's a sign. Just to put something in there, it's up on the rice mill at the port. There's stuff, and there's a signage there. And I just think if we take a second to make sure that it says it's okay to locate in the signs, it would be a little better. And just for clarification, it's nothing more.
Yeah, I think it would be good to, express that. We have the most recent example was down at the what's known as Southport Shops at Jefferson and Lake Washington,
Yeah.
where if anybody noticed the little silo feature on that building, they opened it up, put some stuff inside of it, closed it back up again, and voila, you have a
And it's perfect.
wireless site.
It's exactly what we've talked about for years that you're trying to do in the community. And the only thing I didn't understand is if they do a cell tower, do we have to allow the tribal group to look at the cell tower? And if we do, we probably will never be able to make the time constraints? Is that what I understood you to say?
It's possible, yeah, because, and, the tribes are, that they are working with us, but they are also working with numerous other jurisdictions, all at the same time on this. So it is conceivable that if we spent, a couple of months, to conclude AB 52, then we'd have to put the environmental document on the street, and that's a 20 to 30-day cycle. So now we're about 90 days into our 150, and then we haven't even been able to come here. So it is conceivable that we could be butting up against the 150 days on a lot of these for projects that need to go through environmental review, which probably would be the majority of them, new towers, not the ones where you put it on an existing building or something like that, but anything where they're going to put a new post in the ground would probably be hard to exempt.
And I guess my comment going back to the one that was gonna be at NorCal Beverage, the reason everybody was concerned about having a cyclone fence and barbed wire and everything is everybody drives that way. I mean, it's a main thoroughfare, and I think it's quite different having it there. And, I mean, I had actually seen somewhere, and I couldn't remember where I saw it, that there was undergrounding, and I was gonna suggest either you have to build a building that looks like their building to put it in, or you have to underground it, had they ever come back. But that's just, that's kind of unique, because that's really in a residential type area more so than anything I've seen in a long time, so. Anyway, that's my comments, thank you.
Commissioner Sternfels.
I wanted to thank staff for the great work on this. I think all the suggestions are fantastic as far as moving things forward in the process. And on my day job work, I'm usually promoting folks not putting too much on the application side or denying applications for silly reasons. But as far as getting all the application information up front, I think it's very helpful and commend you for thinking that way about it. I do want to echo Commissioner Lepore's comments on making sure that there's clarity for applicants on everything that's needed up front. And I know that that's totally an administration thing, but whether it's a checklist of all the documents that need to be submitted or something like that, I think that would be really helpful to show our commitment to having a process that's really clear. And maybe even a document that outlines that process for future applicants, recognizing that we're going to be asking for a lot more upfront than we used to. And then I would just echo again the comments made by Commissioner Liebig regarding my personal preference is that we're using existing infrastructure whenever possible. I think it's a waste of space and time and money to put up this, what I think will be very temporary infrastructure in the long term, given the speed of technology development, and a waste of resources in some ways. So to the extent we can do anything in our existing document to further limit new infrastructure being built, or at least if it's going to be considered, it being considered in a way that is either contextual or stands out as a community feature that's positive as opposed to a negative. And I think we had, whether it's the water tower design or something even more innovative that we haven't thought about yet, I think the document in itself should reflect to the applicant that we want folks to be creative and use ingenuity in their, if they're going to proceed with building new infrastructure for these types of facilities. And I think the current document as it reads, and I think this was what Commissioner Liebig was trying to get to, is we reference the old things that we don't want to see quite frequently in the document. Monopole, monopine is kind of referenced throughout the existing standards, but in reality, I think very few of us actually want to see that in most parts of the town that we would actually be concerned about or be hearing this item. So I think my suggestion would be if there's a way to better articulate what we would hope to see at the end in terms of context and design, more so than we currently have. And I realize that we're kind of we have to dance around the issue because this is, the way these need to be written is very precise, but I think I just want to share my opinion and feelings on that.
Commissioner Oster?
Clarify if I've missed this, but it's my understanding that a lot of these kind of wireless approvals don't actually make it to the planning commission, and the ones that do tend to be more what we don't want to see, right? So stuff that kind of fits with the policy, one of my concerns is, I think the biggest pushback we got was the location, that we were locating the one that was proposed on Stone in a mostly residential area that was, I think the property was technically zoned for some sort of commercial or industrial, but it was in a residential area. Is there any reference that we can make to, whether it's in the policy or requiring it up front, that applicants demonstrate that they've explored options that are farther away from residential zoning areas? I don't, am I articulating that okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we typically get their search rings, from them
Yeah.
and see what their coverage objectives are. That one was on industrial property, but there was, residential, right behind there. And that's sort of the paradox, because that residential neighborhood was who they were trying to serve. So the way the policy was set up is that, if they were deeper into the industrial area, that could have been a zoning administrator consideration. And the reason why it came to the planning commission was because of its proximity to the residential area. And I know we heard from at least a few residents on that one that had some concerns. So it's a real paradox. And then there's the whole coverage gap thing too.
Right.
That's always, looming out there. So we do struggle with these, quite a bit. Because so much of our authority has been taken away by various legislation. So we're trying to work with what we can, which admittedly is not very much. Design is really it.
Yeah, well, thank you for that feedback. Something that's not exactly related to this, but it's something that it is related, and I raised it, I think at the last planning commission meeting, was with the guidelines set forth in AB 52. I made a comment about, now that we have this, we kind of have a new normal of conditions. I'm not suggesting that we use those conditions for everything. What I am suggesting is that if you can provide applicants sort of a warning, hopefully, as you have applicants come forward, that they know and they realize the tribal cultural resources requirements. But if you say that this is what we've seen on past projects, these may be things that are subject to your property, that might help them plan in advance. This is, again, not specifically for wireless, but we have a lot of projects coming forward that are going to be needing neg decks or greater. And if they know up front, like, okay, you know this is coming, I want them to know what they're going to be up against.
Yeah, and we will be doing that as we gain more experience.
Yeah, or make
with
it up as
this.
we go.
In general terms, noting that those consultations are confidential. But, we are learning more about this, but so far at least that it is taking a while. And we are telling our applicants up front that, it may be an extra couple of months than what it may have been before, at least for now, until we can get this all more routine and, and the tribes are more ready to do it too, because it's new to them as well.
Right. Okay. Well, that's all I have. Thank you, staff, for work, and I think commissioners have provided some really valuable feedback.
Okay, any additional feedback from the commissioners this time? Oh, very good. I appreciate the staff background and all the information you provided for us so that, we have a very good understanding of what to expect as, we receive future wireless telecommunications applications. And some of what we need to do in advance, I think the recommendations provided by the commissioners based on our experience over the years and technology changes, I think is, very helpful. So if, looking at the creative ways and the upfront expectations, I think, on the last application, demonstrating that they've explored all options away from the residential, that was one of our concerns that kind of postponed that decision. And just, providing as much information as possible, maybe through the workshop, that we can provide the feedback prior to reviewing the application. And I appreciate Commissioner Austin's recommendation for item H5, the contextual idea as part of the design option. I think that's really good. And also Commissioner Liebig's, adding the chain link and as item number J2 and the undergrounding in item 1. Very good recommendation. Commissioner Moore's, all of his recommendations and his institutional memory on being able to pinpoint where everything is and and, just moving forward, I think it's really valuable for us to have everything loaded up front as we move forward so that we can, provide the best decision for, for our community. And at this time, if we don't have, go ahead.
No.
If we don't have any other comments, I don't see anybody in the audience for opening up the public hearing at this time, so we will close the public hearing and move on to the next item on the agenda.
Which is informal discussion.
Formal discussion, yes.
Madam Chair, this past weekend, I attended along with several of my other commissioners, the Sac Valley American Planning Association Commissioner Training, Planning Commissioner Training Workshop. And I would like to thank Commissioner Sternfels for organizing the workshop. It was right here in West Sacramento at our community center. It was well attended and included individuals as far as Dunsmuir. So again, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. That was an excellent training. I learned a lot in the beginning. I stayed for half of it, but I learned quite a bit and read through the material that you provided. And I also saw that there's a lot of places, websites that you can take a look at for additional background guidance as we're looking at our Planning Commission materials. Thank you very much for providing that in our community.
I was very grateful of both the city and my fellow commissioners for the strong attendance that West Sac had. It was a privilege to be able to host the event here in our community, and I just thank everyone on the city staff side and commissioners who attended, even if only for half the day. It was great to have folks there and participating and really show that we stood behind the opportunity to offer a training event in our city. So thank you to all of you.
Great. Okay, no other comments for informal discussion at the time? Okay.
I
Yes.
did want to touch on two other items, actually. Several things were brought up, items that were brought up at the Planning Commissioner training that I think would warrant some additional discussion, maybe not this evening, but I did want to bring it to all the commissioners' attention. One of them was the lunch keynote speaker was the public health officer for Sacramento County, and one of the things they presented on was a lot of the Sacramento area's public health data, everything from life expectancy to top causes of death in the Sacramento County region, or actually Sacramento County community. And I know Yolo County has similar information. I'd very much appreciate it if the staff could help share some of that information. I sent over one link. I'm sure there's others. But I think it's really helpful for us to, as we're thinking about the decision we make up here, sometimes the context of the particular area of the community may heighten our sensitivities. And I've certainly experienced that in my tenure here, thinking about some of the things that are actually happening in that community and how they're different from maybe my day-to-day perspective. So I'd really appreciate if staff could share that information, and thank you for that. The other items I want to just bring up quickly, two of them in particular. One of them was rules for the Planning Commission. I know that's something we do not currently have outside of what's in the ordinance, which is fairly slim. But there was some really good templates out there. I believe I shared one with Mr. Tilley in the past, and would be happy to if you were willing to send that around, I'd appreciate that, just as a sample of a way we can better organize ourselves. Not that we're not disorganized now by any means, but it may be helpful as development continues to start picking up and as our agendas continue to get fuller and as we start meeting more and more frequently. And then the second item was the electronic packets. And this is something I've seen several of us do at the end of the meetings, is ask if we can give the maps back to applicants. I know they're very expensive, and the applicant usually is probably always paying for them. And I think there's a regional movement to move toward a little more electronic documents, particularly when it comes to plans. It would be fantastic if we could have a conversation about that moving forward.
Yeah, could I ask a question on that? Because we've long thought about that. We have no problem providing your packet to you in that manner. But what I've always wondered is how would that work when we're actually here in the meeting, and I don't know that you'd have anything to refer to unless you had like your own tablet or something like that during the meeting.
Could we start with both? I mean, it would, I mean, I think they're digitally available. I've never bothered to download it, but.
Yeah, the entire pack, your entire packet is
Yeah.
posted on the website, and, Friday afternoon.
Particularly the large maps for me, because I know they're really expensive to produce, and knowing that,
I don't need
we're
a
asking the applicant, and particularly sometimes smaller or entrepreneurial-type businesses to print them for us, and then several of us aren't even opening them before the meeting. I'm personally not looking at them unless there's something I'm super concerned about. And so, those items in particular, but honestly, I would bring a tablet or my laptop and plop it up here, and I would much rather do that than use the paper. 9 times out of 10, that's how I do most of my business. And I know that's not the same for everyone, and I realize I don't want to create an additional burden if we go 2 different paths, but, and maybe we could table it for future discussion, but I just want to throw it out there, given
Why'd you look at
today's day and
me?
age.
So who's gonna give me a tablet?
Right.
Yeah, I'll watch his.
But that's,
I'll get a big screen.
But that's why I was actually recommending, I was like, we can have both for now. And I think there's enough people on the commission who would be interested in at least having a digital option, whether that's their primary option or not, And something to support that, and again, this is slightly getting into the weeds, but to support that, having Wi-Fi that was, maybe if there's city Wi-Fi that we could get the password to or something like that, because when you're on the guest, it's got a time limit, and it's a little wonky if we use the Westack guest Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
He was totally thinking that. He's gonna look at it on his Apple Watch.
Okay, very good.
Little map.
All right, those are good items to consider. I don't know if there's any feedback at this time for,
I agree. It'd be nice to have it on your iPad, or maybe just one large map that could be referenced that was here.
sure,
But-
yeah, one large map that we could all refer to. I think that's a good idea to have one large map.
Or you could also say, well, commissioners, here's your packet digitally and in paper format. The largest size is maybe like an 11 by 17, and if you want a larger version, you can come view it at City Hall. Personally, I think that's very reasonable. If you really wanted to come down and see a large printout, we could come down and see the, full-size plans.
Just a comment to you. One of the reasons that we went back to the larger maps, and I think Mr. Tilley will verify this, some of the older people on the commission, that was not me, of course, back then, we couldn't see the little tiny map when it was an 8 by 10.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, it's there. And so there wasn't an option for us, so we suggested that we get the big map.
Yeah, there was a time where the commission did scold us a little bit for not providing the larger
Well, you couldn't
maps.
see
but,
anything on the 8 by 10.
Well,
and so-
admittedly, the detail on some of these, even at 11 by 17 with someone with perfect vision is not always easy to pick up. I
So
think there was.
that was the, but
least
if
with
there's an
digital, you
option,
could
you could look
expand
at
it.
it
Right.
somewhere, it would be fine. We had no option. You had the little one, then the only person that had a map was probably David, and then we'd ask our questions and he'd pull out the big map and then you could see it. So that's kind of how you ended up with these maps.
Okay. And maybe,
Years ago.
maybe it could be at each commissioner's option to have either the.
Well, if you put
hard
it
map
on,
And then, or the digital
wait a
map.
minute, the thing, if you put it on the tab, you might be able, if you had a question,
To zoom.
expand it.
Yeah.
So I saw my kids do this, they go like that and it makes it bigger.
They go like that.
Yeah, something like that. But, that might work if you had it, because I don't know how that works.
Okay.
But that's an option, but that's why you ended up with bigger maps. It was the little ones you couldn't see anything. And then even when you had the big ones like tonight, I missed where the parking was, and I did look at the big map, and I thought it was landscaping. I didn't think of it as parking. So I just missed that. That was my fault. But,
Okay.
so there's probably options. You just have to think it through, but that's the reason we had the bigger maps.
So for our next meeting, we have two items on the agenda, both workshop items. So there'll be some maps with them for our next packet, but it sounds like to me like it'd be a good one to maybe experiment with as to what might work best for the commission, because, we're not gonna have,
you
projects
go.
like these where.
I think that's a great idea.
And so, what would be the commission's preference for our next packet?
Could we do both for the next one and just give you feedback at the next meeting?
Yeah, what we can do is on Friday, we can email out the link that's on our website, so everyone can grab the PDF, because it's one PDF for the whole thing.
Okay.
Right.
So you'll have that.
Mr. Tilly, with the larger maps we get, are those they're not, I mean, typically when I go to the packet online and open it, I don't see the larger.
No, we scan smaller versions for that. We don't have really the capacity to scan the really big maps.
But
They-
do you
they
receive
can
them
send
in higher res
That's what I'm
version?
looking for, yeah.
We asked them to provide us reduced versions, but they're still scaled. It doesn't always work perfectly, going from like a 24 by 36 down to even 11 by 17. But those are zoomable.
They send this to their printer. They send the
Yeah.
digital file.
Yeah.
So if there is a way, I mean, it may, that's the thing, is I think it's a troubleshooting thing, because what you typically will need to do is do like an FTP site or something. So that might be a whole level of, I can't deal with it. But if there's an FTP site or a Dropbox or something that we could access plans, I think I would definitely prefer that over the printed.
So if the applicant has to pay for this, could they provide a way for us to get it?
Well, and say they send a digital copy to the printer.
Oh, they send it, okay.
So like these guys came from like Martinez or Union City, they emailed it to these guys,
I see.
basically.
So we can get that.
So if they can, if they're sending a digital file to the printer, they can send a digital file to the
Of
city. We
course.
just need to figure out how to
Okay.
handle that capacity. So it might be an IT question, and it might not be next
there you go.
meeting. It
Well,
might be the
yeah,
following
and, you know,
meeting.
that was one where they have a professional architecture firm on there, and not all of our applicants are gonna have
Oh, I
plans
see.
to that level. So we always endeavor to get the best plans we possibly can, for the commission and for the public, for their review, but they're not all gonna be like that full formal set that you saw tonight.
So
But-
maybe not have an expectation for all of our maps to come digitally and some to be a hard copy because of that.
Yeah, we can make those available, in any way. We try to post a lot of the project exhibits more on our website now, both for commission use and for the general public. So we're really experimenting with trying to get as much stuff on there and accessible that manner, more so than we've ever done in the past. So next time, we'll prepare a standard packet, and then we'll also send out the link, and then we'll let you work with both ones and see which one you prefer.
And troubleshoot, honestly.
But even now, if you have your own, tablet or anything, you're welcome to bring that to the meeting and to use that to refer to the packet, if you wish to do so, or tablet or laptop. And I will ask about the Wi-Fi password, because the guest one is a little wonky.
Thank you for the indulgence.
All right, very good.
It would be
Thank you.
greener, too.
Oh, I'm sorry, one last thing. There's a high likelihood that I will not be at the next meeting.
What's the
I
date?
think we're gonna have
May 4th or May 5th.
two people will
Could
not
I-
be here.
Yeah,
Commissioner Ward.
don't change everything, because I also will be out of town and will not make the next meeting. So, give me a
What?
chance to
Wow.
look at it
Uh-oh.
before we
Three?
make this rash decision.
Ruh-roh.
Uh-oh.
Ruh-roh.
Am I seeing a quorum
I
problem
know.
brewing?
How's that?
I can be here on the 5th.
Three.
Okay, good. Then I
You'll be able to
I
do
assume our
five.
missing
Yeah, we're
Commissioner Parveen, I assume she would be available to come back on the 5th. So we are anticipating that Charlie for sure, and Russ most likely.
And Commissioner Kelcher will be
Mr.
there.
Kelter.
Okay,
Doctor.
then no Kelter. Okay, well then, I think we will still have fortunately, both of those items will return at a future meeting, so everyone will have their opportunity on those.
And then if you can circulate the rules that Commissioner Sternfeld brought to our attention, and,
I need rules.
maybe providing some background on the presentation you received related to the rules, if you can provide that
Sure.
as well, so that we get a context as to why it's helpful, what it, the benefit of, the pros and cons of having it or not. Okay, very good. Okay, anything else for the informal discussion, lengthy discussion? All right,
Now,
good.
once I get an iPad thingamabobber, that'll be great. Motion to adjourn?
All right, motion, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye. We're adjourned.